All right, so this next fight we have Jiri Prochazka versus Aleksandar Rakic. So this is another exciting fight in the 205 light heavyweight division, and I'm really confused on the odds on this one right now. DraftKings has Jiri at a plus 100, Rakic is at a minus 120. I feel like this should be pretty much as close to a pick'em as you're going to see on this card because Rakic hasn't fought in 2 years now. The last time he fought was against Jan Blachowicz in 2022. He got KO'd slash TKO'd. It was technically a TKO. He wasn't out stiff because he injured his ACL in that fight, and Jan Blachowicz took advantage and followed up with punches after the ACL tore and won the fight. So he's had a very long layoff, Rakic has, since then, and that's very concerning for obvious reasons. And my other concern is, other than the Jimmy Manuwa head kick KO that he has, he's not exactly been a crazy world beater in light heavyweight. The little bit of momentum he has, like seeming like the dark horse of the division, he's garnered from unanimous decision wins over Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos. Those are his two best wins right now. And I'm not trying to be too much of a retrospective analyst here with this fight and kind of discredit where he was at and where Santos and Anthony Smith are at when these fights took place. But what I'm trying to illustrate to you is that when he fought Thiago Santos and Anthony Smith, at those moments in time, those were basically like the tail end of both of those respective fighters' careers in the UFC, at least. Yeah, sure, Anthony Smith is still on the roster. He's still active. He still tries to fight. But realistically, do you see Anthony Smith going anywhere else in the light heavyweight division or any other division if he moves up or he tries to move down? Unfortunately, even as a guy who likes Anthony Smith, I don't see him going anywhere. And Thiago Santos isn't even in the UFC anymore. And as he was on the way out, this was one of the many fights that Thiago Santos had where he lost that mystique. It's like he sold his soul for a shot at the title with John Jones, destroyed his own ligaments in that fight, didn't get the title, lost the title fight against Jones, and then just was so gun shy when he finally did come back that the hammer was no longer the hammer and all this mystique just evaporated around him. And then Rakic is also the guy who just plays it very safe. He gets these unanimous decision wins over those two guys by being the most boring, wet blanket, security blanket, just control time grappler that you'll ever see. And with the way the UFC judging and officiating has been lately, sure, I could easily see him getting a boring ass lay and pray wall install win over Yuri, but that's not really something I feel comfortable with because that fight, yeah, maybe he gets the win on control time over Yuri, but then the very next fucking fight, whoever has more significant strikes but less control time wins. Like nobody can figure out what the fuck the scoring criteria is, let alone from card to card. They can't even figure it out from fight to fight on the same card. You'll see somebody with more significant strikes get held down almost the whole fucking fight, yet still win. You'll see somebody with control time but less significant strikes win. You'll see somebody win off damage, but the next fight they won't win off damage. It's so fucking subjective, and it's just downright embarrassing. And I'm not going to go too much on a tirade with this because it's its own separate topic. But all I'm going to say is this. It's like if the NFL like called a touchdown from game to game a different amount of points. Oh, it's not 6 points for a touchdown, it's 5. Oh, fuck, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 4. It's embarrassing that a professional sport at this high of the level hasn't figured out fucking basic judging.
Yeah.
And the same 3 judges in the course of a night will have radically different fucking decisions and criteria from fight to fight over the course of a night. All this to say, I like Rakic, and once again, he was my dark horse in the division for a while, but he just hasn't struck me as anything impressive. He doesn't have that killer instinct. And I feel like you don't have to go out there and say cliche shit like I'm ready to die and I'm ready to kill my opponent, but gosh damn, you got to have a killer instinct, and he just doesn't seem to have it. And I really don't think he's going to have it after a 2-year layoff where he tore his ACL. He's getting older. He's getting miles, long layoff. It feels like he's kind of peaked, and he peaked at honestly the worst time for him right as that injury occurred. and it's going to be a huge mental block. Like when Chris Weidman fought Bruno Silva not that long ago, just a few weeks ago. First strike he threw was a leg kick to test out that injured leg where he snapped his fucking tibia to overcome that mental block. I think that's going to be a huge mental block for Rakic. I think Yuri's going to throw leg kicks. He's definitely, if he's smart, going to throw leg kicks at that leg that suffered the ACL tear. And I think Rakic is just going to be forced to stand with Jiri. And I feel like Yuri's a superior striker. The only thing that gives me a little bit of hesitancy is, yeah, Jiri is a bit reckless. He does charge in. He does leave his hands low a lot. But I'm also getting kind of tired of people bitching about MMA fighters with low fucking hands. This isn't boxing. This isn't, a pure striking sport. Yes, there are disadvantages to having your hands lower and not having a high guard. But you know what an advantage to it is? It leaves you in better position to defend takedowns. That might actually be a plus against Rakic if Rakic starts to want to get boring and shoot fucking takedowns just to stall out and try to mitigate the activity and control the tempo and the striking. So I'm not too worried about how low Yuri's hands are. And I'm not too worried about Rakic's power since we've only seen it against a shot Jimmy Manua, who basically had Cody Garbrandt chin at light heavyweight, where it had just already been cracked so much, a gust of wind, and he does the chicken dance, as McGregor said about Poirier in the first fight. So, I mean, with Jiri being a pretty decent dog in this fight and him coming off a lot of momentum, I get he just lost to Alex Pereira, but I think this fight's going to be one of those y'all must have forgot performances where people are a little low on Jiri because he lost to a really top guy in Alex Pereira, and it's going to cause some individuals like Ben and myself to really take Vegas for a ride on this for being asleep at the wheel, especially with Prochazka KO TKO at a plus 180 to boost up that money line at plus 100. That's what I'm going with. I get he has a sub over Glover, but that was an extreme anomaly as a result of the referee just not stopping the fucking fight. And Jiri just like, all right, well, if I'm caving his head in and he's not defending the sub because he's trying to defend the punches, then fuck it, I'll just slip in the rear naked, and then you'll be forced to fucking call that. And at least the guy won't take any more damage. So that was just an extreme outlier. So it's tempting at plus 1,000 after subbing Glover, but I think that's a trap. Decision's tantalizing at plus 650 for Jiri. My only concern is if it goes to decision, you're not putting in your money on Jiri by decision, because if it makes it that far, I feel like it's because he's been held down and it's been boring as fuck and stalled out by Rakic. So it's pretty much going to be Rakic at that point. And I don't think Rakic is going to be able to withstand the striking. So all in all, I think I lean KO TKO. Maybe I'd hedge it with a decision, but I don't think the odds on that together are that great. What are you leaning towards, Ben?
That is a fantastic breakdown, Bobby. With the 2 years off, I worry about the time, but I think this is a much better matchup than we are just talking about Calvin Kattar going against a wrestler when you've got coming off of a torn ACL. That's going to be a lot harder than I think going against a guy like Jiri. It's hard being off years from a combat sport. I don't think people understand that's really, really hard to come back from, not just from the injury, just in general. If you take a lot of time off of anything, it's hard. It's harder when you come back. Jiri, I like his KO power. He's got that good forward pressure, which I would worry if him and Rakic were just sitting in the middle banging. I would be a little bit more concerned about it. But I think Yuri's going to pressure him more up against the cage at plus 100. Is it really worth the extra 80 to get rid of the other two decisions or other two methods?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one for sure. It also just kind of depends on what the money line is going to look like as we get closer, because I mean, it hasn't been a huge shift, but just in the last 2 days, there has been um, um uh it started off yesterday at plus 102, right? Now it's plus 100.
Yeah.
So yeah, two numbers, the fucking movement of two. It's not really huge, but who knows what that's going to look like as we get closer and closer, because like by Thursday, that's when the odds are usually a little bit more set, and it takes like a huge swing that would almost be worth an investigation for the law enforcement that looks into those type of things. If after Thursday there was a huge swing one way or another type thing, let's just say that.
I did not think about that. That's a very great point because we're still at plus money now, but
Right,
who
right,
knows? By the time we get closer, it might have flip flop. They might both be at minus money. So yeah,
exactly.
that's a very good take, Bobby. Yeah, I'll go
Like,
Yuri knockout too. You convinced me.
well, I was about to say, what do you have for sharps right now? Where's the percentage of the money coming in right now? Do you have some latest
I do.
numbers on that?
I do. So, and this is I really don't like these numbers, but we're looking at 22% of bets on Rakic and 78% of guys on our boy Yuri side. But then you look at the money, 64% of money coming on Rakic.
Yeah, that's a surprising amount of money on Rakic.
Yeah.
So yeah, you really have to balance that as far as, how much do you think it's going to change between now and, like I said, Thursday on fight week, since fights are every Saturday. Thursday's usually, like I said, set in stone. You have to weigh that cost risk analysis there with how much you think it's going to change. Because right now, as we mentioned, it was only a movement of two. But I personally, my gut is telling me that as we get closer, I think there's going to be a correction in the system, and I think people are going to kind of come to their senses, and more money is going to come in on Yuri. Because I think right now the people putting in the bets, I don't know, maybe they're being a bit hasty, is what I'm trying to say. Because as I was looking up some more information, another thing that makes me lean more heavily towards Yuri, other than the 2-year layoff, was I was looking at his record, and just in general, Rakic has not been active. He's 32, so he's not that old. He hasn't had that many fights, so there's not that much wear and tear. But he's been in the UFC since 2017, and he's only fought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This will be his 9th fight, and he's been in since 2017. And the average for a healthy fighter trying to make a career, trying to make a name, trying to win a belt, you're trying for at least 2 fights a year is your bare minimum, unless you're just getting wrecked with injury and bad luck. But if you're, making it out fast with some knockouts and all that, you're really aiming more for like 3 fights a year. Like 4 is too much, but 3 is the sweet spot, and 2 is bare minimum. And he fought once in 2017 in the UFC, didn't fight again until 2018, only 2 fights in 2018, only 2 fights in 2019, 1 fight all of 2020, which I'll give him. COVID happened. So that's kind of a blip. But then only fought once in 2021 for the whole year of 2021, only fought once in 2022, and then is coming off a 2-year layoff now. It'll be 2 years this May. So he's 1 month away from a 2-year layoff. So I don't know. If people figure that out, I feel like that's going to result in a flood of money on Yuri, because all these things that are so easy for the average person to look up, like I just did, you should be putting more money on Yuri. So I feel like the longer you wait, the more you're going to be looking at closer to a pick'em, in my humble opinion.
2 things. One, you saying that, I feel like saying he's been off for 2 years isn't even as bad as saying he's only fought twice in the last 4 years.
Right. Like
That's
those
insane.
either way you look at it. Yeah, it sucks that he had time off for an injury, but damn, at least you can rationalize it as he had to take 2 years off for an injury. I don't even know how you explain all the
One
other
a year.
years of inactivity.
Wow. That's a great find, Bobby. And then last thing before we move on, we're looking at this. I want a name from you. So look at the over under. 71% of bets are on the under, 96% of the money. The people think that this is going to be an under fight. If this fight ends early, who's ending it?
So people are thinking this is going to be early, then it's got to be because of Yuri. Because once again, the best path to victory for Rakic is control time. Because Devin Clark, he has a TKO over Devin Clark in the UFC. Devin Clark was just kind of like a sacrificial lamb for light heavyweight prospects. I'm pretty sure Johnny Walker made a name off of him. Rakic made a name off of him. I'm sure there's other people I'm about to come across that made a name off of him. Fuck, I'm surprised he's even still in the UFC. He last fought on that Hermanson Pfeiffer card, but he's on a 2-fight skid right now, so he's probably about to be out. And yeah, he's just kind of a name for guys in light heavyweight who are prospects. Ryan Spann, back when he was considered a prospect, choked him out by guillotine. I just mentioned Rakic. Blachowicz, standing rear naked choke. Fuck, that's a rare submission to hit a standing rear naked choke on somebody, and he got that. Alex Nicholson's not even in the UFC. I haven't even heard that name in ages, like Obi-Wan Kenobi knocked him out. Like, he's just kind of a guy that you feed to prospects. Kutalaba, when he was a prospect, beat his ass pillar to post. Anthony Smith choked him out with a triangle. Like, that's Devin Clark. So TKO and Devin Clark, that's not really doing it for me. I've mentioned the Jimmy Manuwa head kick nonstop. I'm not going over that again. And then other than that, Anthony Smith unanimous decision and Santos unanimous decision are his two best wins. But he faced those guys kind of at, like I said, the tail end of their careers. And, you know, that's not his fault. You only fight who's put in front of you type thing. But I'm not, like I always say on this show, I try not to do MMA math because that's how you end up with crazy shit like Mighty Mouse could beat up Brock Lesnar and everything. But you have to look at some of this to an extent. You shouldn't use it as your primary 100% basis, but it definitely plays a role.
Agreed. And I looked up the over-under to see, like, people on this because, like, the money side is just really good. Both money right now are terrible. -165 and -142. So it's not like people are just hammering the under because it's so much better. At -142, that's still a really bad number.
Right. If it ends early, it's because of Jiri. It's not going to be because of Rakic. I get people are concerned because, once again, he has his hands low. He does tend to kind of lean face first into striking exchanges and get reckless and everything. But still, I just don't think – it's not like Rakic is some power puncher. He's a wrestler and not a good wrestler because he's not entertaining. He's not sub-hunting. He's not dominating. He's just control time and holding on. So if it's early, it's not going to be because of him. It's going to be because people are anticipating Jiri to go out there, do some crazy unorthodox striking, and he's got good hands and good striking, and he's got power, and he's going to put it away. So, you know, check Tom Cruise White Samurai for the win for me.
You better start listening to the Better in Green podcast. You will not regret it. Trust me. And hey, I'm Dean Blandino.
Welcome to Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? To Better in Green, eh? Listen in and cash out. That's what it's all about. Come on, let's make cash now. We always on spot and we cover old spot from the bottom to the top, hey. Shout out to Ethan, shout out to Wyatt, shout out to Ben. Welcome to our podcast, Better in Green.